It was once said, "They who sing pray twice." It's the idea that music gives us words to sing that moves the soul and creates a deep connection with God. When we get together in worship, our desire isn't just to have voices that sound good, but to join our hearts together because God is worthy of it all. Each Sunday, a praise team of around 8 people join me, Kip, on the stage to lead our church family in worship. With each vocal part represented, we stand side by side, women and men, black, white, brown, old, and young, to provide a visible, varied representation of our church. We call it a praise team. But how did we get from one song leader standing behind a pulpit, directing time with his hand, to 9 people standing on a stage with microphones to lead a church in worship? Well, I'm glad you asked. In the mid-90s, there were 2 praise teams that began putting out new music resources, as well as hosting worship events and conferences for churches. Ken Young and the Halal Singers and the Zoe Group. And in no way were they attempting to do away with hymns and the older songs, but they brought a new energy and passion and vibrancy to a worship revolution and renewal that was taking place across the globe. Tim Hacker and a few Sycamore View members began meeting on Wednesday nights in our gym to sing these songs and to share in a midweek spiritual feast. This began opening people up to fresh ways to encounter God through worship. Now, prior to this season, our church, much like every other church of Christ, had been blessed by individual song leaders who led heartfelt praise. Men like Joe Godley, Joel Johnson, Dan Shepard, Ed Riddick, John Cook, Jeff Cousins, and Tim Hacker. These guys led songs each Sunday to glorify God and encourage our church. God was honored, people were encouraged. And beginning in 1978, when our church first opened, God prepared us to take risks, to dream big, and to never be afraid to try new things, to unite people and reach a world for Jesus. Because of this, in the late 90s, with John Pittman's guidance and a worship planning committee's assistance, a contemporary worship service was born to explore a different style in worship. To help the church in this worship experience, a few men became the first praise team, primarily to help the church learn new music and to provide more leadership in worship. As you can imagine, this was met with some pushback, but strong leadership helped make way for continued participation. By the early 2000s, female voices were added to help provide leadership for the women's parts. This gave way for one worship leader on the stage, primarily Brandon Cooper or Tim Hacker, to lead while men and women sang on microphones from their seat. This was a big, risky move for a Church of Christ in Memphis. I'm glad we took it. In 2003, the eldership took a risk to hire Sycamore View's first full-time worship minister, and that decision has been one of the greatest honors of my life. I stepped into a church that was filled with God-hungry people, ready to offer God our hearts as we met each Sunday in worship. And with the blessing of eldership, I was able to bring consistency and needed worship flow to each gathering. Since 2003, diversity in our church has grown. Women in our church are afforded opportunities to lead, and therefore our praise team has grown because of this opportunity to include all the gifts. We stand each Sunday not because we are a choir trying to perform, but because we're a united, diverse group of gifted people who stand together to lead. Over 100 people have participated in this ministry, and I thank God for each one. Jill Knight has graciously organized the participants for over 1,000 worship services. I couldn't do this without her help. And God has used our team to produce 10 CDs that are played around the world. And God has used our team to help several other churches begin praise teams of their own. As we move forward with God, we continue to sing the story of God so that we can encourage every person who joins us, whether they are newcomers to the faith or seasoned travelers, to reach for God's heart. We are a part of an unfolding story that God is still writing, and it is an honor to be a part of it.